I will never stop loving that snappy musical interlude that introduces the spotlight. Hello, everybody. For those who do not know me, I am not Corey Gumbs with a big curly wig on. I am Bethany Hawkins, and I am a guest host at the Spotlight because we are I am interviewing our friend, our CEO, our founder of Black Podcasters Association, also known as Black Ass Podcasters. I just had to slip it in just once. Corey Gumbs, thank you for being interviewed today. Air
Hey,
horns, air
everybody.
horns, air
Thank you for
horns.
having me on my own show.
You're welcome for having you on your own show. Thank you for preparing everything and me just asking you questions. So before we get started into getting into all of Corey's business, he is mandating me to do some housekeeping and to read some stuff. So I have to do that. So the script. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Spotlight Series presented by Black Podcasters Association, where twice a week we shine a spotlight on a Black podcaster, creative, or podcast support professional from our online community. My name is not Corey Gumbs. My name is Bethany Hawkins, and I am the assistant to the founder, Corey Gumbs, as well as your guest host. So today's episode, we would like to welcome Corey. But before we get started, if you're watching this on YouTube or one of our other social media platforms, please make sure you like, subscribe, follow, and tap hi Mimi, and tap any notification bells to get alerts for our upcoming episodes. If you're interested in becoming a member of the Black Podcasters Association or want to learn more about it, you have a typo there. Go to the website at blackpodcastersassociation.com. Now it says start the interview. So Corey, we're
gonna start. You milking this. You are milking it.
I am so excited that you have agreed to be on the spotlight. I think it's only fitting and it is so needed for everybody to not only experience you while you host this, but also experience you as a guest so that we can get to know your information, your backstory, and how you came to be CEO and founder of Black Podcasters Association. So again, I do gig on you all the time, is how I show I love you. It's my love language, but I'm super excited that you got to do this. And I am super honored that you asked me to guest host. So thank you. Hi, Johnny. So let's get started right off the bat with why did you create Black Podcasters Association? What was happening in your life that you were like, this is something that's needed?
Ooh, so I mean, if most people have heard the story, if they've interacted with me, it was actually right before the pandemic. I guess it was a personal journey in the beginning. I was just noticing certain things in the Black podcasting space that I was just like, it's like the same redundant stuff, same topic, same stuff like that. And I had actually was talking with an associate of mine, and we were talking, and we were just going over ideas of in the podcasting space. And I had a vision of like having like a conference. That's how it actually really started. I think this is part of the story people don't know. And we talked about it, and we were shooting for, this was in 2019, like November 2019. Of course, we didn't see what was coming. But we were shooting to try to do something that summer. And we were just trying to figure out what's the best way to build up the brand. And she suggested a Facebook group. And she basically just started it, sent me the invite. And what was a real trigger for me when we started the group was around the time they were starting to talk about doing the Podcast Academy. I don't know if a lot of people are aware of it. There's a Podcast Academy. And it was the beginning of that year. I think they were like finally just like letting the world know that there's a group of podcasters and some companies were working on building this organization that wanted to be like the Grammys, the Oscars of the podcasting space. So, I was like, oh, that sounds like a good idea. And I went on a website and I'm looking at the people involved, and I'm not seeing a lot of diversity. And I'm like a big data fan. So like I had already been paying attention to the Edison research and just looking at that graphic in regards to the black podcasters listening growth in, during the course of their excuse me, during the course of their every year of their data that they put out. And I noticed the trend was we always average between 11 to 16%, I think was the highest of growth in that space. So when I saw the Podcast Academy, it triggered a warning in me. It was like, okay, hold up. We're not properly represented in this conversation. We're also still a very considered quote unquote a small, steady growing, but a small percentage of the podcasting space. There's a problem here. And for me, it was like I have a background in music and I love movies. So I understand our history in those spaces. And I was like, here we have a new medium and we're already seeing corporations trying to consolidate and getting involved in the process of like picking who is the good podcasters and all that stuff. And I was like, this is going to be a problem in the future. And if we don't have some kind of form of representation or somebody sitting at the table, just like every other medium that we've been instrumental in and a part of and growing from the beginning and figuring out how to make money doing it. Let's just keep it real. Um, we're going to be left in the same position we were left in those industries that happened 40 years ago, 50, 60, 70 years ago. So that was the main motivation. It was a whim. It was, a very very simple concept. That was the beginning of it. Started the Facebook group, didn't know anything, didn't know what I was doing. Sometimes I still don't know what I'm doing. I just make it look easy. T-shirts coming soon. But I didn't know what I was doing, and at first, it's been a constant evolution ever since. And then COVID happened. Literally, I was looking at the date yesterday. We started, I think, March 9th or something like that. Here in New York City, I'm based out of New York City. Here in New York City, a week later, COVID just like ravaged us. Right, that's when everything just went downhill, and it went downhill fast. So during that whole time space of starting the group and then COVID happening and then that lull that happened and then all of a sudden people starting getting into the podcasting space, it just like blew up. Like we just started getting, we had, of course, like you always do, you start something, you invite your friends and stuff into the group, but then it started becoming more and more black podcasters joining the group. And at first I didn't have any real clear direction. Like I knew where I wanted it to go. I had a vision, but I didn't know how to implement it. I didn't know what my message was really going to be. I didn't know like what the goal was going to be. And it's just gone through an evolutionary period to what it is now. And a lot of it is thankful to guys like to people like you, Bethany. I gotta watch what I say, um, Bethany, and some of the other members that are here on the chat and that are watching. But it's been a really good journey. I think the other part that motivated me with the group too, because originally I wasn't planning on doing stuff like this. My business, my space in the podcast business was my mobile podcast studio. That's all I wanted to do. I always wanted my own studio. I invested my money into it. COVID happened. That just blew up my whole entire business model. So I had to pivot and I started getting into the development, coaching, just learning that and studying people's podcasts and seeing what people weren't or were or weren't doing. And I think in that process, I brought that to the group because I was like, we and I'm gonna say something that a lot of people don't like, and it's going to challenge our community, but I felt like we had to raise the standard. We had to raise the standard on our content. We had to raise the standard on how we were producing because as you know, Bethany, I hate bad audio, and a lot of our people were putting out very poor quality content wise, structured wise, audio wise podcasts. And I was seeing that a lot in the group as people were promoting their podcasts and stuff. And I was like, we got to raise the standard. We can't just keep having conversations about sex, entertainment, sports, gossip, and stuff like that. We have people out here who have podcasts about really interesting subjects in our community. And I was just like, part of the group has to be to raise the standard. We have to start really focusing on helping people improve their podcasts, helping people to learn how to do their podcast. Because another thing we noticed during COVID was a lot of gurus and a lot of these people just throwing programs out there trying to get that quick buck, just trying to get ahead of that rush of podcasters that were coming in and preying on their lack of knowledge, preying on their lack of understanding how to podcast. So it's kind of multifaceted. Like it's like it's like I started seeing like uh and people being taken advantage of, people not putting a lot of effort into what they're doing or thinking what they're doing is good enough. So over the past year, it's just been me honing that. So like when the group first started, it was open. You could post whatever you want. People were promoting like crazy. The whole my podcast like for podcast likes, whatever. And I stopped that in the group because one, I was like, this doesn't make sense. It's like me going, it's me like being in a room full of preachers and we're all just preaching to each other. That's not how you get your congregation up. That's not how you get your audience up. So I stopped that. But what really made me stop was, and I felt really bad about it, was somebody in the group asked a genuine question. They were lost. They asked a question, and I did not see the question for 2 months. So that's when
That's
I was
wild.
so that's when I was like, I reached out to the person, they never responded back, and that's when I was like, okay, this can't happen in the group anymore. So for all you guys that are watching that don't understand why your posts get denied and why we don't allow promotion, it's because there's people in the group who have genuine questions, that are genuinely looking for help, that are genuinely lost, and I basically lost one.
So let me ask you that's a great segue into my next question. What has surprised you the most within, I mean, because in March it's actually going to be a 4-year anniversary that you created
Two,
Black Podcast Association.
two.
2019?
So it was
3.
2020. It was 2020.
It was 2020.
It seems
So
like it's 3 years ago. It's
is
only been
it
it's only been like a year and a half, Bethany.
I'm like, is it 2050? Because that's what it feels like. Are we in the Jetsons time? Because that's where we are.
And I didn't even realize we're in 2022 and it's a couple of months. Jesus.
So in that progression from where you had initially started and what your purpose was, there has definitely been shifts all along the way, which is the sign of any great organization, association, is that growth, right? And
Mhm.
that learning and that experience and learning and gathering input from not just from yourself, but other people that you collaborate with to make things better. So, what have you found has been the most surprising things that have happened in the group that kind of, for good and for bad, things that just made you go, oh, okay, and things that made you go, oh no?
Uh Man, it's been so much. I don't even know how to answer that one. I think the past couple of months in the group, I think have really when I say like maybe starting in actually I got to give credit, and I always throw them under the bus, Mimi in Africa, because at the time when Mimi reached out to me about doing Clubhouse, I wasn't using Clubhouse, didn't know what I was going to do, and for me, when that was surprising because it was just random, right? She just reached out and I was like, well, okay. And she started that project, and then Africa got involved in it, and we were just trying to talk about collaborating and stuff like that. And I think I was in the way of the group, because I didn't know how to do certain things, and by them getting involved and helping me get over my public speaking hump of talking on Clubhouse and doing those bi-weekly conversations and helping me get comfortable and helping me so, I go through imposter syndrome like anybody else. Is like, well, what am I doing? Why am I here? Who am I to say this is this and this and that, right? And just having those conversations help validate it. And then us trying to do the meetup part and having people come out, like, that came out to the meetup was like more even further validation. And I think when I started getting comfortable with it, I started removing myself from the conversations in the group because my personality, sometimes I take a more leadership role, and like my staff used to say when I used to run a group home, it's like I'm a drill sergeant, so it's like this way or that way, and as I started moving away from there, I think that's when the group really started to really take its form and shape, and then me allowing it to become allowing it to become itself, right? So I think that's, for me, that's the biggest surprise, is that I was able to do that. And then I'm not making it about me, but I think me doing that was pivotal in there, and the encouragement from Mimi in Africa to do things like doing public speaking, which led to what we're doing now, right? So to me, that was the biggest one. And I think by doing the spotlight, by doing the meetups, by doing the clubhouse, it helped bring more awareness to the group and also helped show us that we were having really in-depth conversations, not the generic podcast conversations you see on Clubhouse. Because one thing about me, I'm contrarian. I don't like to do what everybody else is doing. I like to look at what people are doing, see what's working, what's not, and say, where can I figure out my way in here, or what can I do better? And I think some of the craziest stuff were just people coming in the group and getting mad at me because I'm like, you didn't read the rules. So like, I'm not a big person that blocks people on social media, but there's a lot of blocks. There's a I've even gotten threatened and all that stuff. So it's just like, um, but the evolution of the group, it's been beautiful, for me and for you guys, especially. And I always feel like, being on sports teams, playing sports in my life, and building teams in other professions. When you get the right mix of people, it just everything takes off, right? And I think that's what we have right now. We have the right mix of people. We're making the right partnerships. The announcement we made with Afros and Audio, I think, is just going to take it to the next level. But my main drive has been with this group is to really establish our community in the podcasting space, and to show the world we're serious about what our product and what we do. So I don't know if that answered your question, but
It did. And also, I really appreciate the open concept in regards to questions that Black Podcasters Association allows in the Facebook group. Because as you and I have discussed just during one-on-one meetings, there are other groups within the Facebook community, as well as, different hosting stations, where it feels like a lot of, if there are questions that are thrown out there, it's monopolized by the same individuals who are pounding in, this is how you should do it, this is the only way to do it. And I know that you have commented in some of those groups with a lot of pushback, like, you're directing the person incorrectly, and
yeah.
this is why. So I really think that it is appreciated and valued that so many people can come in and answer a question with so many different perspectives, and each of the perspectives are respected because they're just offering what they know. And I feel like that differentiates this group from a lot of the podcasters groups that's just all inclusive all the time. How do you feel about that?
So I was one of those people. If you know me personally, Corey's always right, as people like to say, and 9 times out of 10 I am. But yeah, it is. I don't care. It is because on a long enough timeline, I want to be right. So, and I have scientific evidence of that. So, but no, long story short. So, one thing, people say I should have become a teacher, which is hell no. I don't have the patience for that, believe it or not. I come from a family of teachers, but I was also a manager, and I've trained staff, and I also understand there's personalities, there's different levels of learning, different types of learning, um, that people go through, and this is a creative space. I'm also a creative. Used to do music and stuff like that. That's part of who I am, and you're very focused on your craft and what you're doing, or you have this idea of what you want to do in this craft, in this space, and it's your baby, right? This is you. You're putting a lot of you into this process. And what happens is people get confused. They don't uh they don't I'm sorry, I'm trying not to look at the comments because then I'm just gonna throw off my train of thought. But uh long story short, the people are at different stages, right? And I think that was what I learned through running this group, is understanding that people are at different stages, and you got to meet them where they're at, right? No matter what you do in politics, where you have to meet people where they're at and get the message across to them. And I've already was rubbed wrong by seeing what was going on in early COVID state, early COVID, with all the people out here just trying to hustle people. I got a program, how to start a podcast in 30 days, this and all of that stuff. And one of my first clients, she said to me, she wished she had met me like 2 weeks before she spent $1,200 on a program, because she said she would have hired me to help her get her podcast going, because when she got that program, the information in there just sucked. And I don't like people getting taken advantage of in that space. That's one reason why I never did well in sales, because I always felt like it wasn't always, not saying salespeople are dishonest, but I just felt like the certain tactics that companies use are not, or can be misleading, stuff like that. See that in the same podcast space. And for us in our community, we're not podcasting, for a lot of us, is new. Like, a lot of people have just introduced this over the past 2 years, right? So they don't understand. I've been listening to podcasts since the early 2000s. It was when I had a different venture I was trying to do with music artists. I saw podcasting, what it was going to be, and I thought it was going to be a great tool for artists to connect with their audience. But I left that space, and then years come later, now podcasting is what it is, and I got back into it. But For me, I know it's a long-winded answer, but for me, I push back because I don't like misinformation. I feel like misinformation that I see a lot of people doing, especially for certain communities, because it's very ego-driven. It's been you've been in control of this space for so long. You think you know what's right for everyone, and what works for you doesn't apply for us. In our community, resources is access to resources is a very big thing, and I will argue that all day long. We can make those little arguments about people sacrificing and spending their money here and there, but the truth of the matter is access to things like studio equipment, knowing where how understanding audio, all of that stuff. It's not a lot of people in our community that are masters of that, right? Or formally trained in that space. So when I see people giving information that people genuinely, you could tell they're genuinely lost, and somebody's like, "Well, yeah, you don't need to worry about editing. You don't even understand what they're trying to do." You know, yeah, some podcasts they don't need editing, right? Some people have a really tight ship where they just put it out. You would think they had it, and they don't. Some people like the raw, straight off the press type of stuff. But for me to tell you you don't need editing and tell you why you don't need editing or why you should or shouldn't do editing is to me is more effective in helping a person really create the product that they're looking for. So I noticed in our space, we're getting a lot of black people get a lot of wrong information, especially from our white counterparts. And I think some of it is a cultural not lack of understanding. So when not understanding why we shouldn't have to code switch our podcast, right? A lot of people in certain podcasting communities think it's all about just money and generating leads and sponsorships and stuff, not realizing that sometimes the information is what the audience is looking for, and then you just build your monetization platform around that. So it does rub me the wrong way sometimes, and I think it's important for us to really curate the information that's out there, especially people like yourself and I, where we're producers and we're actually helping people build their products. Because people come to you with really lofty ideas and execute, don't have the budget to execute it, don't have the team to execute it, don't have certain things in place, and the pushback sometimes think we get when we're trying to guide them the right way and set it up properly is unfair, and a lot of it is because of misinformation out there, because people are getting wrong information. So, like using a Blue Yeti, I'm throwing that out there. Blue Yeti can hate me. I'm not looking for a sponsorship from them or anything with them, but like using their mic to do your podcast in my book is the worst thing you could do for one of the worst things you could do for your podcast. But people push back on that, and it's like, but you don't know what you're talking about.
And I
So
think I'm sorry to interrupt you.
no,
I think it's also important that there's a community where there's a lot of likeness so we can discuss things like, and I think that Afrika brought this up once in regards to translation, Descript, and getting the vernacular of Black podcasters correct, because their AI in regards to transcribing for Black podcasters can just be wildly off base from from what was originally stated in the audio. So I think that having a place that you feel safe to express those kind of, hey, is it just me? Or like, are you having these same experiences? And that people can come in and offer their value of experiences that they've had so that you don't feel like you're the only one. We're in other places where there is an intermingling, or if you are, a few, you wouldn't feel as comfortable to express those concerns and to express that experience because you may be pounced on. Like there isn't that safety there.
oh, I mean, we as black people, we understand that. It's like that across the board in a lot of industries and stuff. That was one of the things I wanted to make sure too is that we can have real conversations, that people don't feel like they're being judged, that they don't feel like they're being attacked. I mean, it happens, right? We can't control it. We can't control that all the time. But but I think it's just like when I talk to my friends about building businesses, and when I'm like, you got to build a culture, right? It's about building the culture that you envision for your business, and where you can create an environment where your employees and thrive. it's the same principle, right? You want to create a place where we can thrive together. We can have our differences. We can have our differences of approach, differences of like, like how we have the audio versus content conversation, right? We can even joke about it, even though sometimes maybe it makes it seem like a little personal. So um that was really important for me. And I think for me also, just moderating what posts come into the group and not help to create that culture. And after a while, the group it just evolves, and people just realize, okay, this is a space I don't have to puff my chest out and be egotistical. I don't have to be attacking people. I can actually genuinely reach out and help one another. So I think creating that culture is important, but I can't take all the credit. I think some of the members in the group help create that culture, and as well. I think it's really what it comes down to is what why are you there, right? Why are you here? What are you looking at? If you're really genuine and looking for help and looking for assistance in getting your podcast where you wanted to get it to, you kind of got to leave your ego at the door, right? You got to listen to other people of all experiences, and that's one thing I also try to encourage people. And I wish we had more people who come into the group, because I see when they join the group, what they say, I'm a beginner. I want to learn. I really do try to get those people to become more involved, because even though you may be a beginner, you still have experience that you could bring to the table that might help somebody else who even may be more advanced but never thought about it or saw it through your perspective, right? So because there's more to podcasting than just hitting record. There's structure. There's things you have to do that somebody, Bethany, my whole workflow is terrible. So like, but that also help you with your efficiency in dealing with pod fading and helping you deal with those frustrations and those moments when you feel overwhelmed, having a strong workflow, being efficient, like all these things. There are people out there that maybe beginners in this space, but have experience in other fields and stuff that they could bring in here. So I think it is important for members of the culture be influenced by the members of the group. And again, once again, why are you here? That's very important.
So I'm going to answer a quick question for RL. He asked, "What mic do you recommend?" I use the Samsung QTU. This is mine. Corey and I have had this discussion ad nauseum. A dynamic microphone, a condenser is just going to ruin your life and make you want to hate yourself. What other podcast mics do you recommend?
Well, I think microphones are personal preference, right? And the more I've been doing this with the podcasting space, the more I've realized it. So, I will say this: dynamic or nothing, right? Don't use if you get it, you have to invest. And I think this is a good question. There has to be some kind of investment you have to make into your podcast. Your equipment is one of them, but what mic do you have to get? What mic do I recommend? I just recommend a dynamic mic. Microphones, depending on the company who builds them, they have different sounds. Some mics. So like this mic really it picks. I think it has a low. Darrell, I know you watching. You're gonna laugh at me. I can't think of the word right now, but like you get that more bassy tone in this kind of mic on this Rode mic versus some other mic. So it depends on the company, the supplies, the materials they use to build that mic, how it sounds. So my biggest recommendation: go to a Sam Ash, go to a Guitar Center, go to some place that has the mics, and go talk to them and see if you can do some tests on the mics and see how you like it, how they sound and stuff like that. Because you don't need a $500 mic; they're really good, and a lot of times they will help you sound much better because that's what you're paying for. But you can do the Q2U, or like a SM58, or I started with the with Electro Voice Cobalt CO9s, which nobody ever heard of. They're really good mics. Actually, they're too good. They were picking up stuff way out the blue, but they're performance mics for the concerts and stuff. So they're built for that. So I think really it's just I won't say a recommendation. I like Rode mics. I like the company Rode. I like how they build their products. But there's some really good brands out there. That's the Heil. There's the I think it's Heil. That's how it's pronounced. There's Heil. There's Samson. There's Shure. For me, you would have to really go out and test it out for yourself and see how you sound on it, because there's different resonances and pickups and stuff that make people's voices sound different. So
So,
it's a whole nother conversation and
is a
training.
whole other conversation that we do not have time for today. But thank you for answering that. And thank you everybody for writing in the chats and asking the questions. I see you, Steve. I see you, White Label American. I thank you all. I see you, Mimi. You guys are all JD, GD. You guys are the best for being here. Super appreciative. My last question for you before we start wrapping up and I start asking you where can people find you and what a Black podcaster means to you and all that question is you do not have a podcast. So, but you have extensive audio experience. I'm going to drop, you worked with Def Jam, like you worked with big named individuals that people would just be like, what? If, you started name dropping. How do you feel that experience correlates with creating a podcast?
That's a good question.
I know. I do this for a living.
Some people be like, "Yo, Corey, that's a good question." Now I get to say it. So my experience, so I've always when I was young, I was a rapper. Wanted to do the production, so I really wanted to do the music. I wanted to be in the studio. I even went to Five Towns College briefly to go work in the studio. I was too young for it. Didn't finish my program there, whatever. Interned at Def Jam during '97, so I helped break Foxy Brown's debut record. I was there for Muddy Waters. One of my favorite bands, Onyx, I was there for them. I was actually in some of the studio sessions for Shut 'Em Down, that album. So, and I was on tour with The Roots, another favorite group of mine. So it was a great experience during that time period. And I learned a lot about the business. And I'll keep it real with you. I think that's what killed my drive to become a rapper. Not, you get to see the business side of things, and the glitz and the glamour just goes right out the window. But it was a great experience. The audio portion comes in from, this has always been a hobby of mine as well. So it's like I've always been into the recording and studio, had my own little setups here in my house and stuff like that when I would do my beats and have friends come over and rap. People got to understand that in the podcasting space, I don't care what anybody says, this is still an audio only format, right? The inclusion of video into it it's just another tool of exposure, but it's really an audio only format. And I had a quote. I don't have it with me. I keep saying I'm gonna memorize it. But even in the movie space, they say if you don't have good audio, you don't have a good movie. So I think people really need to understand that part, that audio drives your work. That's why that's why they put so much money into the experience, the IMAX experience and Dolby Atmos and all that stuff. All of that stuff drives the experience for the listener. But in the podcasting space, it's audio format. So you have to have good audio. People are not listening to they're listening to podcasts while they're doing other things. When I was listening to podcasts, when I was on the train, I'm working on stuff. I'm doing my coding projects and stuff like that. I'm driving. Sometimes I throw a podcast when I'm cleaning up the house and stuff like that, right? That's still what most people are doing. So we have to respect the audio space. So if you have to respect that, you have to invest in it. You have to appreciate it. You have to learn it. I don't care. It's science. It's complicated, but at least learn the basics of it so that you have an understanding, so that you can put out a good product for your listeners. People also need to understand our ears are sensitive. We wear these headphones. The past 30 years, there's plenty of studies out there saying how people are going deaf faster because of headphones. So you have to respect that. You have to respect. You don't want to be the person that's the reason why your audience goes deaf, right? Because you have too much air and or you didn't get your levels right, or you introduce something to your recording that just makes it painful for people to listen. Ears get fatigued also. So the science of audio recording actually, I remember when I was in school, that was one of the first things we learned about was ear fatigue. And the reason why these boards and all this equipment exists, it's not just to also give you a good sound, it's also to help with the actual how your ear perceives sound, and whether it becomes fatigued faster or not. So this is decades and a lot of science research that is put into these equipment. Now everything is much easier than it was 20 years ago, 10 years ago, 30 years ago, where a lot of these like programs, they do a lot of the processing for you, so you don't have to go into the scientific side of it, right? But we have to respect the audio, and we have to respect our listeners' ears, because you want them to constantly keep coming back. And if my listening of your podcast is a painful experience, I'm not coming back. I think loyalty in the podcasting space from the audience point of view is very finicky, because the way the people that listen to it like to consume the content, where we binge. I like podcasting. I think podcasting created the binge episodes, psychology of things, and we just see Netflix and the rest of these places pick that up. But remember, podcasting, people would binge hours of episodes of a person's podcast, because it was just, people were just putting out that much content. So if I want to listen to 4 hours of podcast and it's hurting my ears, I'm not coming back. That's me personally. And some people sit here and say, no, you can't. You can't sit here and tell me you're going to listen to bad audio and you're going to sit there for hours because your ears can't handle. You go to a club for 4 hours and you leave and you're damn near deaf. So I know you're lying, and I'll call you out on it every time. So yeah,
it's really interesting that you say that, because in regards to leveling, when I am working on a client's podcast, I want to level it. So if somebody is binging that podcast, all of the levels sound the same. They're not going to get to the intro and their ears are going to be blown out. They're not going to get to the interview and they're going to be questioning, what did they say? Leveling is so important for that reasoning. And ear fatigue is a true thing. It's a legitimate thing.
And you're not aware of it. Like
No.
it's real subtle. Like, especially if you listen to the headphones. Some people it's a headache. Some people it's just. I know for me it's frustration. It's just like I just got to take my headphones off and just listen in silence. I'm not aware that it's causing me painful or is causing me pain or anything like that. It's just, all right, enough's enough. I just need some silence right now. And that's the sign of ear fatigue. Of course, then you have the ringing in the ears, which is not good, but did you have that? You have certain things going on with your ears, and sometimes we just don't think about it because you're not putting two and two together. But and it's not leveling, it's normalizing.
Yeah, whatever. So I am not a true believer in only audio. I am a true believer in audio and content, because your audio can be point on, and if you're going on and on and on and on and on and you don't have a point.
I'm sorry, y'all. There's a lot of great comments, but
there are phenomenal comments.
I'm trying to focus on the conversation, and I can't multitask in that space. So
it's not just audio. It has to be great content. That you have to get to your point. Land the freaking plane. If you're going on for 25 minutes about one particular thing and there is still no point to it, the plane has gone wild and it's been hijacked. Just land that plane and move to a next topic. Which brings me to my ending topic. Corey, what does being a black ass podcaster mean to you?
Somebody said I secretly hate them. I don't. I love you guys. You just gotta step your game up. That's all. It's tough love. What does it mean to be a black podcaster? I don't know what it means to be a black ass podcaster, but I think it means I never expected to ask that question to be asked of me, right? One, because I don't have a podcast. Even though I'm a support professional and I'm in that space, I do actually have a podcast. It's just sitting on my desk and I haven't recorded or written it out or actually done anything with it yet, but it's going to happen. But I think what it means, I think podcasting offers our community a space to really have great conversations, to really to change the stereotypes of how we're seen in regards to the things that are of interest to us. And we always tend to have a very unique way of expressing it and a very unique way of talking about it. So I really think it means a lot. I think it's great for us to get to get some of those pent up things that we when we code switch at jobs or amongst some of certain groups of our friends and stuff, where we want to have conversations, where we want to talk about these things. And we see the pushback we get. The whole incident with Black Lives Matter last year, and the response in social media, the response in from friends who we thought were allies and stuff like that, showed us that we do need this space. We do need something like this for ourselves. We need to be able to express those frustrations, those thoughts, those views, those perspectives, because that's how we change the world. That's how we influence the world. That's how we let people know. I mean, we did it with rap. Look what hip hop did in the past 40 years. That's my era. I remember in New York City, you had to wait till Friday night, Saturday night. And when I was a kid, you snuck because mom was like, nah, you gotta go to bed at 9 o'clock. Rap didn't start until 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night, and you only had it for 2 hours. And they kept saying it's a fad, it's a fad, it's a fad, right? Now look what it does, look what it does. So I see that I see it doing the same thing for us in the podcast space. Um, but it's our ball to drop too. You know, we have to be careful on who we align ourselves with. Chasing that bag is not always in your best interest. We're seeing now with all the money that was being thrown around last year, people have lost their IP over that, right? They lost their creative control over it. And it's been a very frustrating process because a lot of people come as friends and they're really just opportunists. So I think as Black podcasters, it's one of the only true areas where we can really be ourselves and express ourselves, and we control that, right? I don't have to go get a record label with to get my podcast out there. I can invest in my podcast. I have full control over it, really. So I think for us that's very important as a community, that we recognize and understand that this is one of the last true areas where we can really express ourselves and our voices. So
Yes, the barometer to enter this field is low, but that doesn't mean that you should half-ass it. That doesn't mean that it should be
right.
shoddy craftsmanship. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't have your ideas laid out. That doesn't mean that there shouldn't be proper planning and proper execution. So, although the barometer is low, we have very high expectations, especially Corey Gumbs, because he'll call you out on your crap. So thank you so much for doing this interview. I hope you had fun, and I hope that I did you justice. So tell everybody where they can find you, how they can join Black Podcasters Association, where they can stalk you on these social media streets.
All right. So before we get to that, I just want to make a real quick announcement. Last week, Afros and Audio, Talib and myself made an announcement about us joining forces. So it's really now the Black Podcasters Association, powered by Afros and Audio. And what we're trying to really do is build a really engaging community. They have a great brand. They have a great festival. We're in line on a lot of things. We see things a lot in the perspective. So we started that, and some of you guys took advantage of it, which is wonderful. But I want everybody that's watching and everybody that's out there that's listening. Right now, we're doing our I guess it's the official announcement. I'll probably make one later on in the group later, but we're going to be doing our open enrollment for our founding community members. It's called the Founders Plan, and basically you come in. It's very limited space. We only have about 30 slots open, so if you want to get in, you get in. It's going to be it's a private community, so there is a fee, a membership fee, but on the Founders Plan, you get a significant discount on that fee, and it's a set price for life. So as long as you're a member of the community and you're in good standing, you'll have that price no matter what price changes happen in the community. And we have a lot of things we're going to be rolling out over the next year. So I really urge people to snatch that up, because I will shut it down once we hit our quota. But we're actually going to be launching officially in February. So if you're out there, you want to get involved in it, definitely reach out to me. The first thing you can do is go to the it's blackpodcastersassociation.com to learn more and to sign up. But you can reach out to me on Instagram at the Black Podcasters Association. A lot of you guys already follow it, but you can always tell your friends. If you're we have the Facebook page as well for the organization, and then we also have the Twitter account, which unfortunately Twitter, I couldn't get a better handle, but that's it right there. The Black Pod as ASSOC.
It could have been Black Ass Pod. It could have been Black Ass
what?
Pod.
You know what? We might just do that.
It could have been Black Ass Pod.
We might just do that. It's creative. But if you're looking for me, like in regards to consultation, recording services, editing, stuff like that, you can go to my Instagram. Is Black Label Podcast Studio, and it's the same thing on Twitter. Well, it's BL Podcast Studio. on Twitter, as well as there's a page on Facebook, the Black Podcast Studio, is Black Label Podcast Studio, and that's really a mobile studio. So if you're ever coming to New York and you think you have to bring your equipment and stuff, no, you can just holler at me and I'll set up everything. I'll meet you where you're at and we'll get it going. God, people are talking about Black Ass Pod.
It's a movement.
It's
Thank
a
you,
movement.
people.
It's your own movement.
Thank you for co-signing on my movement. I do want to say I'm so excited for Black Podcasters Association, presented by Afros and Audio, and transitioning into the Mighty Networks platform. It is so amazing to see all of these subgroups that you're creating and curating for the enhancement of everybody that's part of this community to not only be better in their podcast, but to grow as individuals, to grow in their businesses, to grow just overall. And I think that we do such a beautiful job as a community in doing that already on Facebook, that with us having the ability to transition over to a platform which provides, more freedom and more organization and different groups to attach yourself to, it just makes everything even more stellar. So if you haven't had an opportunity to go in there and join this at the founder's price, you have to do it now. It's a phenomenal price. I kind of got at Corey about it.
I'm gonna keep it real with you. It's $50. It's $50.
It's $50. It's $50.
That's the lifetime price. And to be honest with you, the content that we have, like for instance, you're gonna get access to some of the Afros and Audio workshops, the replays of those. So there's a lot of information just off of that alone, because the Afros and Audio have been doing some really great workshops over the past couple of years. And also you're gonna have an opportunity to go watch their old festival, year 1, year 2, and year 3, as well as whatever comes in the future. We're also going to be doing some other workshops. I mean, it's going to be a lot of content. We just ask people to be a little patient because we just started this. It's just rolling out, and we have this, man, it's going to be great. We're going to have communities just for editors. So if you want to just go and build with editors, a community for a group for a book club, the book club. I almost forgot about that. That's about to drop. So, I mean, I know we're getting to the pitchy part, and I know we want to wrap up real quick, but I just want people to understand that the whole goal of the group, why it's moving in this direction, is because Facebook is limited, right? We can only do but so much, and they have certain policies in place that if we do certain things, we can wind up losing the whole entire group altogether, and I don't want to do that. A lot of people put a lot of time and effort into that group, but it also, just moving into Mighty Networks, just gives us a little bit more freedom and a little bit more access to do those things that you guys have been podcast. See, this is why I can't look at the comments.
That made me chuckle. I'm not gonna lie.
But we can't see it on our side, but I'm gonna see it in the Facebook group. But long story short, Mighty Networks just offers us a more rounded framework or platform to be able to bring those things that you guys have been asking for: networking opportunities, community opportunities, workshop, and just learning opportunities. And you guys don't even know. If I showed you my journal right now, you'd be like, "Holy crap, $50? That's it?" Yeah, and
trust, because he keeps texting me about them. So there are a plethora of.
I'm like a mad scientist, man.
He's driving me crazy. Just join so he can stop bothering me. And I do want to reiterate, it's only $50. We bought literally a large pizza and 2 salads the other night, and it was more than $50. So I live in Massachusetts. It's very expensive. The pizza had pepperoni on it, so we are. I know, pepperoni pizza and 2 salads, over $50. So we are wrapping up. We're so honored that you joined us today. I hope that you watched the replay. If you didn't get an opportunity, Corey, you are a whole dream. I'll never say that again. So you could just put this at
That's
rewind.
What she said.
If you want to make a mixtape of me saying you're a whole dream, you can absolutely do that because you have the credentials. I talk to you.
You might have the next reel on Instagram.
I talk to you 5,000 times a week, but whenever I get an opportunity to talk to you in person and see how truly, truly excited and invested in this community and in this experience that you provide so many people. It just, I'm so proud to be a small, teeny tiny fraction of what you are creating. And I adore you. So thank you so much for agreeing to do this. I know I kind of like twisted your arm a little bit, but you said yes. So haha, sucker. So
look at that. They already trying to get you to hijack the show.
So thank you everybody so much, and enjoy the rest of your Tuesday.
Thank you, guys. I just want to end it real quick and just say, you know, I wouldn't be where I'm at without the members of the group, because you guys have influenced me and inspired me. There's been plenty of times where I was like, delete. I was going to hit delete on that group button, and I was like, nah, you know. And I've had some people say, Corey, you got to stop complaining. If you're going to do this, you got to do it, right? So I'm glad that it's moving in this direction, and thank you guys for being a part of it, because there would be no community without y'all. So, all right, everybody. Well, that was fun. I hope to never have to be interviewed again, but that's not what's going to happen. So, but all right, everybody, have a good day.